Judy Thornton lived in a world of polished perfection. Her morning routine was as disciplined as the rows of hydrangeas lining her immaculately kept lawn. A steaming cup of artisanal coffee, a skim of the neighborhood news, and a sharp glance through her lace-curtained window. She was the self-appointed guardian of her street, ensuring that everything remained just as it should be, pristine, orderly, and most importantly, familiar. But this morning, something was different. The sun had barely begun its ascent, streaking the sky with amber and lilac when she saw him. A tall, broad-shouldered black man, dressed in worn but clean construction attire, moving toward a dark blue pickup truck parked near the newly built commercial lot. Judy's nose wrinkled at the sight. For weeks, she had watched the construction unfold on the edge of her neighborhood with growing irritation. The hammering, the dust, the workers trudging back and forth. It was an eyesore, a disruption to the pristine calm she had curated for years. Now, seeing him near that truck sent her into full alert mode. Judy had heard stories, too many stories, in her opinion, about crime creeping into good neighborhoods. And now, in her mind, she was witnessing one unfold in real time. The audacity. A man like him, near expensive equipment, trying to get into a truck? There was only one explanation. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she yanked open her front door, stepping onto her driveway with a righteousness that sent her housecoat flapping around her ankles. "Hey, you there! Stop right where you are." The man turned, his face calm yet unreadable. He looked at her with a weariness she didn't register, a look of someone who had encountered far too many Judas in his lifetime. "Good morning, ma'am," he said politely. Judy scoffed. "Don't ma'am me. What do you think you're doing? Where do you think you're going with that truck?" The man sighed, exhaling slowly, measuredly. "I'm going to work," he replied evenly. Judy's eyes narrowed. "Oh, really? Don't lie to me. That truck doesn't belong to you, does it?" He kept his patience. "Yes, it does." "Oh, sure it does," she sneered. "You people always have a story, don't you? Probably stole the keys. Probably waiting for the right moment to load up stolen tools." His jaw clenched, but his voice remained steady. "Ma'am, I don't want any trouble. I work at this site. That's my truck." Judy's heart pounded with indignation. He thought he could just brush her off. "I don't believe you," she snapped. "I'm calling the police." She pulled out her phone, her hands trembling with self-righteous fervor as she dialed 911. "Hello? Yes, I'd like to report a theft in progress at the construction site on Oak Ridge Drive. Yes, there's a black man here. Yes, black. He's trying to steal a truck, or tools, or something. You need to get here now before he gets away." Rodri, the man in question, stood beside his truck, his face betraying no reaction, though inside, his stomach twisted with a familiar mix of frustration and exhaustion. He had done nothing wrong. He was simply existing in a place where people like Judy thought he didn't belong. The sound of sirens shattered the morning calm. 2 squad cars screeched to a halt in front of the site, their lights flashing in staccato bursts against a quiet suburb. 2 officers, one a young woman with sharp, assessing eyes, and the other a veteran with the weight of years in his stance, stepped out cautiously. Judy stepped forward, practically vibrating with triumph. "There. That's him. That's the thief." The female officer turned to Rodri. "Sir, please step away from the vehicle and put your hands where we can see them." Rodri complied without argument, raising his hand slowly. He had learned long ago that resisting, even when innocent, only made things worse. "I understand, officer," he said calmly, "but I assure you, I haven't stolen anything." Judy let out a scoff. "Oh, come on. What are you waiting for? Just arrest him already." The veteran officer shot her a look. "Ma'am, we need to investigate first." He turned back to Rodri. "Sir, do you have identification?" Rodri nodded, moving carefully to pull his wallet from his pocket. He handed it over, his work ID clearly showing his name and the company logo. Just then, another man emerged from a small office trailer on the site, a middle-aged man in a hard hat, his brow furrowed with concern. He hurried toward the officers. "What's going on here?" The young officer stepped toward him. "Sir, are you affiliated with this site?" "Yes, I'm Mark Patterson, the site manager." Is there a problem? The veteran officer gestured toward Rodri. This woman here claims he was attempting to steal equipment or this truck. Mark's eyebrows shot up in incredulity. That's ridiculous. Rodri is our site supervisor. He's been with us for 5 years. He's one of our best employees. The officers exchanged a glance. The young officer pulled out her radio. HQ, we're going to need security footage from the site. Can you pull any feeds available? Judy's face paled slightly. You don't need footage. I saw him sneaking around. He doesn't belong here. The veteran officer turned to her sharply. Ma'am, we'll determine that. Within minutes, the footage arrived. The officers gathered around, watching as the security cameras replayed the morning's events. There was Rodri, arriving at work as he did every morning, unlocking his truck, getting ready for the day. No theft, no suspicious behavior, nothing at all. The officers turned back to Judy. The young officer folded her arms. Ma'am, based on this footage, it appears your report was false. Judy's mouth opened and closed, her carefully crafted outrage beginning to falter. No, I thought I saw something. The veteran officer sighed. We're going to need to see your ID as well, ma'am. Judy huffed but pulled it from her robe pocket, handing it over with a scowl. This is outrageous. I was just trying to protect the neighborhood. As the officers ran her information, something curious happened. A ping came back. The veteran officer's brow furrowed as he read something on his screen. Then he looked at Judy with new eyes. Ma'am, are you familiar with the name David Miller? Judy blinked. Of course. That's my husband. What does he have to do with anything? The officers shared a glance. Because we just found something very interesting. Judy felt her stomach drop at the officer's words. What do you mean? She demanded, her voice rising an octave. The veteran officer, Officer Reynolds, fixed her with a hard stare. We just ran a search on your name, and your husband, David Miller, is currently under investigation for financial fraud. Specifically, there are several flagged transactions linked to this very construction project. Judy's mouth went dry. That's ridiculous. My husband is a respected businessman. This must be some kind of mistake. The younger officer, Officer Carter, wasn't convinced. She tapped on her radio. HQ, can you run a deeper financial background check on David Miller? We have reason to believe there may be discrepancies in the funding of this project. Judy's face flushed red, her indignation giving way to a flicker of panic. This is absurd. I called you to handle a criminal. That man, she pointed at Rodri, her hand shaking, was trying to steal. Reynolds sighed. Ma'am, we've reviewed the footage, and your claim has no merit. In fact, you've made a false report, which is a crime itself. Judy stepped back, her breath coming faster. This is harassment. You're treating me like I'm the criminal when he... Before she could finish, Officer Carter's radio crackled. HQ to Officer Carter. We've got something. Financial logs indicate large sums of money missing from the project, unauthorized withdrawals, all linked to an account under David Miller's name. Carter glanced at Reynolds. Looks like we need to have a talk with Mr. Miller. Judy's body went rigid. No, this has to be some sort of mistake. Reynolds wasn't having it. Ma'am, where's your husband right now? I don't know. Carter narrowed her eyes. You don't know where your husband is. Judy hesitated. The truth was, David had been acting strangely the past few weeks, coming home late, whispering on phone calls, brushing off her questions. But she had never imagined this. I think he's at work, she stammered. Reynolds nodded. We'll find out soon enough. He turned to Carter. Call it in. Let's bring him in for questioning. Judy's world spun. You don't understand. David would never. Reynolds cut her off. Ma'am, I suggest you calm down. Right now, you're dangerously close to obstructing an investigation. Judy snapped her mouth shut. Rodri, who had been watching the scene unfold with quiet patience, finally spoke. Can I go now? Carter nodded. Yes, sir. We apologize for the inconvenience. You're free to go. Rodri took a slow breath, then shook his head with a tired smile. I figured this would turn out to be something other than what she claimed. He climbed into his truck, but before he drove off, he gave Judy one last look, not of anger, but of something worse, pity. Judy turned away, her stomach twisting. It didn't take long for the investigation to close in on David Miller. By the afternoon, the police had tracked him down at his office, where he was confronted with the financial evidence. At first, he denied everything. "This is preposterous. I've done nothing wrong." But the numbers didn't lie. The forensic accountant brought in to review the logs found clear signs of embezzlement, funds skimmed from the construction budget, rerouted into offshore accounts. Faced with the undeniable truth, David's confidence crumbled. "I needed the money," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "The debts, they were piling up. I had no choice." "And your wife?" Reynolds asked. "Was she involved?" David hesitated. Then he exhaled. "She knew, but she didn't want to know." "What does that mean?" Carter pressed. "She never asked questions. She didn't care where the money came from, as long as we kept our lifestyle. She just wanted to keep up appearances." The officers exchanged a glance. That was enough. By the end of the day, both David and Judy were placed under arrest. David for embezzlement, Judy for filing a false police report. As the officers led her out of her house, handcuffs digging into her wrists, the neighbors peeked from their windows. The same neighbors Judy had once ruled over with her judgmental stares and whispered gossip. Now she was the spectacle. The news spread like wildfire. Local woman arrested after falsely accusing black man of theft. Husband caught embezzling thousands. Judy and David's names were everywhere. The very community Judy had been so desperate to protect from people like Rodri now shunned her. Neighbors avoided her. Friends stopped answering her calls. The once pristine reputation she had built crumbled in an instant. Meanwhile, Rodri continued with his life. He showed up to work the next day, as he always did. But this time, his co-workers greeted him with more than just casual nods. "Sorry you had to go through that," Mark said. "It's disgusting what she did." Rodri just shrugged. "Not the first time. Probably won't be the last." But there was something different this time. This time, justice had been served. Judy's attempt to wield her privilege as a weapon had backfired spectacularly. Instead of exposing a thief, she had exposed herself, her prejudice, her entitlement, her complicity in a crime far bigger than she could have imagined. As Rodri drove home that evening, the sunset casting golden light over the city, he felt a quiet sense of vindication. He had done nothing wrong. And for once, the world had finally seen it too.